Hi, and welcome to the Louder Than Silence podcast with your host, CG Wagner. I am very excited to announce the launch of a new series, From Survivor to Leader. For this series, the other staff members and I are having discussions about all things LTS and what it means to be leading the work in long-term care for survivors of sexual violence. It's a mix of our own personal experiences, the work our team does, and how those two things impact each other. For longtime listeners, don't worry, we'll still keep posting episodes for both our Meet the Team and Survivors Have Paid Enough series. Lots of great content is still on the way. But for now, let's jump into the first official episode of From Survivor to Leader. So, welcome everybody. I'm so excited. So if you don't mind, for the other three of you here to take a sec to introduce yourself, kind of talk about what you do on the LTS team. All right. Joe, you just unmuted, so I'm gonna call on you first.
Perfect. I was like, are we doing it via the email list? Like, how are we doing this? All right. So I'm Joe. I am the program manager here at LTS. So programs are the ways that we connect to the community. So that's like running and training the people who run the cohorts that we do. Our workshops are ran in cohorts. So it's like a closed group so that we can have a level of privacy and create that safety that we could really be vulnerable and share. So that's like the basic entry into LTS. And so I help facilitate those, or anyone who's facilitating those other than the members here who came before me have been trained by me. So I'm currently training new leaders. And then I also help organize events that we put on for our community. And right now we have a second type of cohort. I'm doing Write Louder, and I may get my hands on the book club. It just depends. But yeah, pretty much I have some level of involvement in any program that LTS is currently doing.
Hi,
Awesome.
I am Brittany, and I'm the new development manager at LTS, which means that I'm in a super fun role of developing relationships with people, specifically with other business owners and those in the corporate world, which has been my world for the last 2 decades. And I love that I get to be a bridge between that world and Louder Than Silence. I get to find other people who want to partner with us in serving our communities with this healing work that we're doing here. Um, and in very simple layman's terms, I fundraise.
Find the mute button. I'm Christy, and I do our social media management. So that just simply means that I'm responsible for and oversee and maintain all the material that comes across our social media accounts, just ensuring that it's consistent with our messaging, brand, if you want to use, a technical term, and also just community engagement. Um, in that role, it's being responsible for content creation, graphic design, video content, being able to strategically like plan out what the calendar, what events we're putting out on our calendar, how we're not so much advertising for that, but how we're getting messaging out there. Media outreach is one of the things I've been looking into in regards to connecting with other trauma recovery and mental health podcasts in order to pitch interviews and increase just our organizational reach and visibility. So that is me.
Amazing. It is interesting to hear all of you describe what you do in your own words, since I was, the one that hired you. But it's really exciting for me to have the team, right? For those of you who are listening who maybe aren't as aware that I'm the founder of Louder Than Silence. And what that means is that, like, I joke that it's not just like bootstrapping, it's like you're making the boot as you're trying to bootstrap. And so, like, it feels kind of like this miracle that it's a team of people doing this now. And just all of the expertise and the skills and like all the amazing things that each of these ladies brings to the team. Just like I am constantly in awe and like so grateful for all of you. So thank you for that. And let's jump into our questions for today. This is very much an intro, right, to the many, many episodes that we have planned for this series. I think for the sake of ease, if you don't mind going in alphabetical order based on your first name, then we all know what the plan is here for answering. But our very first question is, how have your experiences impacted how you do your work at LTS?
So in my prior careers, and I've had several, my work was fueled by a paycheck, and or it was for me to like make a name for myself, to like rise through ranks, or even like I was fueled to like seek approval. I wanted approval from others. And now at LTS, my work is my purpose. And that is to support healing for women who have, unfortunately, had similar life experiences as I have. And I know that every connection I make and every donation that we receive is healing for someone who really needs it.
For me, and I wrote my things down just because that's me. I put, well, first of all, you can't market something you don't believe in. And so it's because I was naturally doing that already. So when I would talk to different people, I would naturally bring up LTS because it was so impactful for me. And so how this has kind of fleshed out in my own experiences impacting the work that I do at LTS is I also, in a professional sense, serve in a role as a trauma therapist. And so I went back to school after going through the LTS cohort to do my LMSW. And that's important because I was able to kind of see sometimes like some of the gaps and holes that are there when people are trying to navigate recovery or healing. And so the content that I create comes from a trauma-informed lens. And so that's how my professional, my other professional role comes in, because I do see this as a professional role. I think it's, giving a voice to advocacy in something I really, truly believe in. One of the other things that I feel passionately about in regards to just the work that I do at LTS, and I wrote it down because it was, so it was, let me find it. Here we go. Sorry, guys. It's just authentically represent the full spectrum of the healing journey. That's why I wanted to remember it, because I was like, that's really good. So that's our hope, and that's my hope when I'm doing stuff and creating content for LTS, is to really like represent that broad spectrum. And it's a perspective to storytelling. It's a 360 degree perspective on storytelling, except it's done in relation to graphic design and content and those sorts of things that we're producing. Yeah, that's that.
CG, I'm imagining that you're not answering these and then I'm next. Is that correct?
Well, I am planning on answering them, but I realized I didn't clarify what the expectation was there. So how about, because I'm the one asking questions, I'll just like ask the question, then go last, and then like go into the next question.
Perfect.
Does that work?
Yes, that's just making sure, because
Yes.
of the alphabetical. All right. So there's this meme going around that says you become who you needed growing up. And I feel like that encapsulates like who I am as a person. um, uh, One of the experiences so I have 5 children. After my second birth, I had a friend who offered during birth to be my doula. And the idea of a birth doula is like hands-on support, like somebody who shows up and is there through the really hard moment, and they like connect with you. They want to make sure, are constantly checking in with you and then providing whatever it is that you say you need in that exact moment. And so after I had that wonderful experience, I was like, this is what I like. This is part of who I am. Like, I love showing up for people. I love being in the thick of it. I'm not afraid of the hard. And so I worked as a birth doula for a while. And that was my first glimpse of like learning how the body works, learning how it's affected by pain, learning that there's actually proof that if you have a person in the room with you while you're experiencing pain, you experience less pain. And so everything that I learned as a doula was like the beginning of like trauma informed for me, like being more trauma informed. And I came to LTS because I needed it. I had lost my community because I only had a faith-based community and I left the faith. So I had no community. And so then I found LTS and I was starving for community and trying desperately to heal myself from my own sexual abuse as a child. And as soon as I came into this group, I was like, this is it. This is mine. I want to be all about this. And I just I feel like this job is literally like catered to me. Like, I am just doing what I would do naturally. Like, I love organizing. I was always the one in my family to like text all the siblings, like, hey, what is the plan for Christmas dinner? Who's making what? Like, it's just what I would do because no one else would do it. So this job is literally just like the perfect fit. I just am me and I show up and that's it.
And you say that's it, like it's not a huge amount of things that you are doing and offering to the community, but sure, sure, that's it. That's it. I love kind of this like sense that all of you brought around this idea of like oh, like this is just like an outreach of like what I already want to do and what I already care about and like how I see myself in the world and like what I am inclined to, um and I like inherently know that, right, about each of you, but hearing you say that was like, oh, like it was a little like touching moment. Yeah, how have my experiences impacted my work? What a great question. I'm glad I came up with it. Um, but the reason that I started the very first workshop that became our like now like intro program for all of our community members is because I was in a community group that was being co-led by two people many years ago. And one of the people in one of the group meetings said that the hardest thing that he had ever had to deal with was figuring out what to major for in college. And I was furious. I was just like, that's the hardest thing that you've ever had to deal with. Like, and now I can like look back and be like, he's probably in denial because like most people have had some like challenges, right? But at the time, it's just like, oh, we are not talking about the same things here. Like, I am like barely scraping by day to day. Like, who can possibly understand that? Like, why am I in spaces where it's like, yeah, everything's great when like clearly it's not. And and so I think that like as kind of Joe said about like you become the person that you like needed when you were a kid, like that was kind of the thought behind like getting all this stuff going for LTS. It was really a like, what did I desperately need? And how can we bring that to life? And and being able to offer that to other people has also allowed the opportunity for me to look at some like of my own deep-seated patterns and coping strategies and all that good stuff. And it's been like beautiful and frustrating and like incredible and like moments of like hilarity and like comedy and moments of just like feeling your heart is being just like wrenched because of like the stories that you're sitting with. And through all of it and all the ups and downs, like I can't imagine like having not done this. Like it's just like such a big part of my life now, and I don't think that I would have gotten nearly as far in my own healing if not for this organization and like for the other three people in this call and like the way you've all shown up professionally and personally for me, and just like the beauty that comes from people who keep saying like I will keep showing up, and then where that changes things. It changes the world, it changes lives, it changes relationships. So I feel very grateful. And also the moments of frustration of like, oh, good, I get to feel this now and deal with this situation. Cool. Great. That's exactly what I wanted. And I won't speak for anybody else if you've had that experience or not. But all right. Anything else any of you would like to chime in on before we jump to the next question? All right. So our next question is, LTS is a survivor-led, meaning that let's start over. LTS is survivor-led. This means that our staff, workshop leaders, and half of our board of directors are survivors. Why do you think it's important that this work is led by those who have been there? And what unique perspectives do survivors bring?
Here we go. I feel like it's important that this work is led by survivors so that the survivor community members feel, one, safe, and two, seen. Like I kind of want to jump onto what you were saying, CG. Like I have never felt so seen in my life as I do within the LTS community. And it's just an incredibly important aspect of healing. When you know that you're no longer alone, that you're not like everybody's story is different, but there are these like connected pieces and similarities where like you might not know exactly what the other person is feeling, but you can sit with them in it. In our community, like you're not judged for who you are or your past mistakes, you know, things that were born out of the violence that you experience. You're met every time, you're met right where you are. And it's huge. Survivors bring a really unique perspective within our individual stories, and not just the pain that we endured or the hardship, but like the healing and the work involved that, you know, has brought each person to where they are, like in that present moment.
So the thing that comes to mind is lived authority and authenticity. So one of the big things that I think is so important and why I love like what we do here at LTS is that dynamic of it being peer-led, survivor-led. And the reason why I think that's so important is because survivors bring like an irreplaceable form of expertise. Like they embody the knowledge of like what trauma looks like, what it feels like, what works, what doesn't work, right? Like they're the expert in what hasn't been working, and not to knock, you know, professional spaces. I'm in a professional space in another dynamic, but I see the value. I wish we had like, if we could like replicate this across the board. I mean, I think it would just be so amazing because for a survivor to go into a community, like I know that me having a place to be authentic, to not have to like be perfect in my response or to have the answers or to still be like there are things I'm still figuring out, you know, or responses I'm still figuring out, whatever it might be. And so it's just this like continued pursuit towards healing. You know, we say all the time, like healing isn't linear. There's not a linear pathway. If there was one, we'd be all like F and dandy. But there's not, you know, there's not a linear, like you do this, you do this, you do this. And so then you're going to be okay. And so it's such a powerful place. You know, I like what Brittany said about finding a place where you can be like authentically you, coming into a group. And you know, Joe does a great job of this. Like we do like a check-in, right? And then you do like a checkout kind of thing. Like you set, like you kind of, do y'all still do that, right? It's been a minute. It's been a minute since I've gone through a group, but I was like, I'm pretty sure you do. So it's like recognizing where you are coming in, and you can come in messy because healing is messy. Like one of the things that that I had put was it isn't theoretical understanding. It's wisdom earned through lived experience of surviving, healing, and thriving. And so there are areas where I'm thriving, there are areas where I'm still healing, and then there's areas where I'm still surviving, right? And it's in that shared group where I'm not having to, like, I get to go into that group and I get to talk about things, and then it helps, like, I don't have to explain the things. And so just that, you know, I'm sitting with someone who understands, who's been there before. So I'm not having to like go over the details over and over, which is also re-traumatizing. You know, but like I'm able to experience and notice what I notice. And in the process of that, it brings, I don't, is enlightenment a word? I know it's a word, but like I don't know if it's the right word for that, but it like brings an awareness of like, oh, I'm still like surviving in this space of my life. Or, oh, I really am thriving. Like that's amazing. Or man, I'm doing, you know, I'm healing, and like I notice that I've healed in this area. And so that, yeah, that's my biggest takeaway, is just that authenticity that LTS provides. And it honors the lived authority, like the agency, you know, that those who have gone through our programs, like that they've experienced and lived. I think that's huge. Right.
I definitely think it's huge. It's I've been there before, or I'm still in it with you. One thing I was thinking is another thing that LTS does is EMDR therapy. And when you go through our EMDR program, we pair you with a mentor. And the mentor is just somebody who's also done EMDR, because EMDR is one of those things that's like, almost everyone's like, am I doing this right? Is this normal? And I think that's how a lot of survivors feel in just life. They're like, is this a normal reaction to this thing? Is it normal to feel this way? And there's this level of like, yeah, I totally felt that way too. Or yeah, that one was weird. It took like, this is how I dealt with how to come back to baseline. Or like, it's just this level of like, I've walked this path, or I am currently walking this path, and then you just feel less alone. I don't know about all of you, but for me, I think growing up, having been abused as a child, like I spent most of my life feeling like nobody will accept this part of me. And there was this level of just like intense loneliness that was a lot of self-isolation. But that level of like feeling alone was just so normal that something about having LTS, all like survivors, like we're all survivors. It's like, look, everyone in this community has been there. It's not just like you and one other person. It's like all of us get it. And there's just something really powerful about sitting in a group of multiple people who all understand. And when you say something that usually people's jaw would drop, instead people just nodding their heads like, yep, that's, I don't think there's anything more like affirming for a survivor than being in a community of other survivors.
Yeah, there's like four different memories that like flashed in my mind when you said that of like different circumstances where it's like people sharing and somebody like and them expecting people to like not be able to handle it, only to find people being able to hold that space because they understand that space. And um and one of the other things that I have seen a lot that I kind of love is somebody sharing, and it feels jumbled, right? Like when you're trying to explain trauma, it doesn't feel coherent most of the time. So like if somebody listening like hasn't tried to do that, it's very challenging to actually point A to point B try to explain something like that. And so somebody will share and it will feel to them very confused, messy, jumbled, incoherent, like, and then they'll say something like, "Oh, I know that didn't make any sense." Or I'm sorry, like nobody was probably tracking with that, or like something to that end, and have people be like, "No, I understand exactly what you mean." Like it's just like this inherent like I understand trying to explain all of that, first of all, and I understand the mess that that feels like and it still totally made sense. And I think the first time that I experienced something like that, for me, it was like the light bulb moment of like, this is what we need. Like, this is what people need is to feel like it doesn't have to be polished and clean in this like perfectly presented story in order for other people to be able to interact with it. I can come with a like word vomit and have people be like, oh yeah, I get that. Like I do that too. And have that just be like an acceptable thing. And one of the other things that I think is really like incredible and beautiful about these spaces that I've experienced is the willingness to like go deep with people and how that's often not found in other spaces. And so, like, the ability to be like, okay, I know that if I am going to an LTS meeting, not only can I come however I am, like messy, angry, confused, scared, whatever, but I can also just like be very honest about like, this is the thing that I'm struggling with today, and be able to know that the other people can hold space for that. And like, that is what the community offers is it's not a group of people who are sitting around talking about like easy peasy, sunshine and rainbow and puppy dog kisses. Not that we don't have those moments too, but it's also the ability to go from, okay, we can talk about sunshine and rainbows and puppy dog kisses, and then we can also talk about the hardest thing that we've ever tried to navigate. And like, it's the breadth of the human experience that we are doing together. And I think that people having been there is the thing that allows them to offer that space to others. Um, and I can sit here and just even with the three of you think about different circumstances of like, yeah, like I have felt very understood and seen and known because of how each of you have shown up for me, and I know you're offering that to so many more people as well. So it's a beautiful thing.
To piggyback real quick on what you were saying, it's recognizing LTS was born out of necessity, right? Like, had there been a place where this was occurring, you wouldn't have birthed it, if you want to let me like use labor terms. It wouldn't have been, but it was, so there's something really beautiful about it because, survivors know, like when you think of, seeking services in like a traditional sense, there's almost like there's a hierarchy, right? And so that looks very different. And it's not that there's not a place for that. There is a place for that, but there's very much a place. Like I feel very passionate about if I can like channel people into, you know, LTS, but groups like this, which I haven't come across others. So I'm just gonna like, tout ours. But there is something completely different about you come in on the same place, right? And so you're not questioning yourself. And think about like Joe and I both came out of faith backgrounds. So if you're coming out of a faith background, and some of those groups that maybe we would have been in, you're oftentimes questioning that dynamic of like, am I allowed to think this? Should I think this? Oh, I don't know if I should build that, because then am I not honoring whatever my faith belief is? Like, am I not honoring, my faith belief if I'm having a lot of anxiety about going to this place or this place? And so it's really neat to see how, one, it was birthed out of necessity, but two, also how innovative it is. Because I remember being in grad school writing papers on a peer-led group that we were doing, at Louder Than Silence, and literally having, professors go, is this like a real thing? And I'm like, yes, it is a real thing. And, and then they want to come in with like all of their whatever, all of their like, well, what about boundaries? What about this? What about this? And I think you can have a peer-led group and still maintain boundaries, because you're helping people develop healthy boundaries. You're developing them for yourself. And then in turn, you're helping, the people that you're in group with foster and develop those healthy boundaries of what it looks like to be in a healthy community, which you may or may not have a whole talk on healthy community. Just saying.
If I could, I would also like, just off of that idea of like peer support compared to, talk therapy or traditional therapy, when there is that, like, this is the professional that I'm going to, and they have all the answers and they're going to help me find them. And if you have a background like me or some of the other people who come into our community where someone in authority is a perpetrator or somebody who has abused you, those relationships can automatically feel unsafe. So being in a place where somebody is like, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to do at all. I am not a professional. I do not have authority in this. All I'm telling you is like, yeah, I've been there, and you want to talk about it. And that's a totally different, like, just approach that for somebody like me specifically, like, that feels so much safer.
And to piggyback, and then I'll stop piggybacking on Joe, like, that professional doesn't have all the answers. I mean, that's bullshit if that's the vibe that they're putting off, and I would find a better therapist. So yeah, they do not have all the answers, nor should they be telling you what to do, right? Like, it makes a totally different, like, it's totally different in the healing perspective if you arrive at what you need to do because you feel empowered to do that thing. Right? Or you're making the decision because you're exercising agency for the first time for yourself. So they can have ideas, right? Like, when I meet with people, I have all kinds of ideas of like, oh, they could X, Y, and Z, and like, but honestly, I know that doesn't work because I know it didn't work for me. Someone giving me the answer wasn't beneficial.
Oh no, we lost you, Christy.
Action. Maybe not, but probably.
We lost you for a second. Do you mind saying the last part of what you said?
Oh gosh, CG, and how am I going to know what I said?
I don't know. None of us know.
Okay, so
it's like a mystery
no one
now.
knows? Okay. So what I was saying is, where did you lose me at? That professional doesn't know what they're talking about. No, really,
Yes,
they do.
Yep.
Okay, that professional, if they're telling you what to do and you're not arriving to that on your own, there's a lack of empowerment there, and there's a lack of agency because it's one more person telling you what you should be doing. And if I start throwing out the word like, hey, you should, I mean, I'll catch myself, because that's not going to empower them when they arrive at that empowerment component where they trust themselves and the decisions that they're making for themselves, right? And exercising that agency and autonomy. That's going to be way long lasting. Yeah, that sounds great. That is going to last. That is like, that's the end goal, is for them to arrive at what they needed, what is best for themselves. Because I think sometimes you can get in these spaces, and again, I work in these spaces. So like, you can get in these spaces where there's a lot of mistrust of oneself when harm has occurred. And so like, my mentality is always, how do we build that trust of self? What do we do, which I, EMDR, but like, what do we do to foster that empowerment in oneself and in their identity, and that they can trust that like the decision that they're making is the right decision for them. Yeah, which is yeah, I have no idea what I said. I'm sure it was really great. We'll just all go, God, that was so great. But you just see I'm like rolling with it because, yeah, I can't remember. Anyways, that's good.
It was great. The whole thing was great. So we're figuring it out. Um, but yeah, I didn't really realize how much of a thing this was when I first launched LTS, that I realized that I found myself being in these spaces where people were looking to me like for permission for something, or like to like allow them to do X thing, and being like, oh, I'm not going to give you permission to do that. And having like realizing that that was the thing that was like, oh, like people didn't have a paradigm for I'm not telling you what to do, even though I'm like leading a workshop. And realizing that like that is the thing, right? Like helping promote for each person the like you get to navigate for you what this looks like and what the next step looks like. And you're going to, do things that you wish you had done differently. And you're going to do things where you're like, wow, that totally changed my life and is incredible. And it's all of it. But it's like, it's your life to live, not for somebody else to tell you what your life should look like. Um, yeah, makes a huge difference, as it turns out. So, connected question. We kind of dabbled in this a little bit, but like wanting to more clearly define this idea of what does authentic community look like when it's led by those who have been there. So like practically speaking, like from your perspectives, what does that mean?
Um, so practically speaking, it looks very, very real. It's very raw. It, you could feel very exposed, but then you also feel very safe. Um, it can feel very ragey, and not even just for your own like pain, that is sure to like come up and out, but for others. I remember feeling very just like angry for other people, um, and sad, um, and but also like it's fun. Like we're here talking about like hard things, and we can still like embrace and lean into Christy's like screen freezing and all the brilliant things she said, and just being, and this is very much like how like the cohorts exist, and that we like we show up for each other. We're showing up for ourselves. But I mean, there were days I didn't want to, I didn't want to show up, but I also wanted to show up for other people. And I wanted to hear somebody's story, and I wanted to hold that space. Um, so it really like the authentic community, it is whatever it is, because everyone's on a different journey, and some people have had horrible days or weeks or months or years, and other people are just in a different place. But it's about showing up and just like sitting together, holding each other, and just um, being very present in this extremely sacred space of watching these layers unfold. Um, the presence is healing in and of itself. Um, and I feel like that for me was what authentic community was.
I love that. I mean, I would say for me, yes, for every brilliant thing that Brittany just said about how it was, because I was like head nodding the whole time. I think it was for me just that radical acceptance in the messiness of everything. And there is nothing like dark trauma humor, right? Like we would laugh at I would not be able to do that with my friends who've never, I don't want to say never experienced anything, who have not navigated the space of survivor, because there is something about experiencing kind of like the darkness, and being able to crack a joke, not as a deflection, but more as like a release, of like, oh man, that was, some crazy crap. And then recognize, like what was maladaptive resilience turn into healthy resilience, right? To be able to like expand that window of tolerance. And that comes from being able to be in a place where that radical acceptance of your messiness, whatever you're coming in with. And there were times I went in like happy-go-lucky. But when I went through the group, because I went through it with Brittany, and CG was one of our leaders, it was probably like one of the hardest, seasons personally for my family, when I started doing that. And so it was just, some weeks you'd come in and like, I understand. I mean, I remember Brittany freezing, or like going to a different room in a different space, or like we, all have, like Brittany and I both have kiddos. And so it was like, trying to get away from like whoever's at the door. When I went through a group with Joe, I remember, her kiddos. And so it was just, it's like showing up how you are authentically. And then being able to like the birth out of that community, that authenticity, that is because of that vulnerability, right? If you don't have trust with one another, you're not going to have the capability to have vulnerability with one another. And so that trust that wasn't just given, like I think over time we all earned it. But we were able to earn it in that space because of how we showed up. And so it's just huge. But like seeing Brittany get married, and attending her wedding, CG coming to my graduation, like all of these things where, like even on like CG coming to my graduation, I was sitting there thinking, nothing against family members, but like it was just my immediate family that came, and then CG and her partner. And like, I'm gonna tear up when I think about it, because I was like, oh, there's that old part of me that's like, oh, they couldn't be bothered with coming and celebrating this thing that honestly, in the 90s, when I was going to school to be a lawyer, I left because of the sexual harassment from the judge that I was, working for at the time. And so I didn't know that at the time. Like in reflecting, I'm able to look at that and go, oh, he created an unsafe place. And for whatever reason, my brain was like, this isn't safe. I'm going to be done. And so to go through the LTS program and to be empowered, like week after week, not like, I wouldn't say it was like off the charts noticeable. It was like just a slow drip of noticing I'm showing up differently and more with more empathy and compassion towards myself, and actually more strength. Like, oh, I did like in some degrees overcome a lot of things, whatever it might be, right? And so now I'm like coming into this space, and it's because of me coming into the space and having the support of that cohort that I was like, should I go back to school? I mean, I don't know, like I'm in my 40s, like, which is not really what most people are like contemplating, is like, should I do that at 40? And then sure enough, it was because of that group, because I knew like at the end of the day, I had the support of like the girls that were in my cohort that I'm still friends with. I had their support, that I knew like, oh, I can do this thing. That's kind of crazy. So that's authentic community. It's people showing up when you have this expectation of like the people who you would think would show up. And I have a great relationship with them. They're great, whatever, but it was more just recognizing like, oh no, I had people that like, they showed up because they like had a desire to celebrate what had just been accomplished, because they knew my story. My family didn't know my story of like stepping back from that because of, sexual harassment at the time. And but you guys did, and you knew that story. And so because of knowing that story, you were able to celebrate on a whole different level with me. Okay. Like I'm legit saying thank you.
Christy, I will say also, like so when I went through the cohort the very first time, Brittany and Christy were my leaders. And part of the cohort is you share your story. And after I shared my story, Christy was the one who said that she that I was resilient. I don't think anyone has ever told me before that word resilient, and it just like meant so much to me. And what I was getting at was that it's not just that like we are proud of you for like having the guts to go back to school and do the thing, but also like there is a level of like we see how amazing you are at holding space for people, and it's not just like, oh yeah, you accomplished something. It's like, oh my god, you're going to be so amazing at this. We're so excited for every person who gets to sit in your room and talk to you because they are the luckiest. Because finding a therapist ain't easy, okay? And that's the therapist you want. So there's also that. It's not just celebrating a win, but it's like celebrating that you are going to be changing the world one client at a time. So back to the question. Authentic community. So recently in my life, I've gone through some pretty hard things. And at one point, CG would text me about every 2 days. Hey, friend, how are you doing? I don't think that like most communities step up free. I've been in faith communities. Usually if you tell me going through something hard, the next Sunday they're like, how was your week? And like nobody calls you, nobody shows up. And I'm sure there are some that do, but I'm saying in general, when you are authentically yourself and vulnerable and real and be like, hey, I'm going through hell right now, then that gives people the ability to like step into the place of being like, hey, I'm going to check in on you. And I had a fun panic attack a couple weeks ago, and I dial CG's number and she's busy because like, hello, the woman works. And Brittany happened to text me. I'm not joking. Like the minute I am done trying to call CG, Brittany texts me and I text her back. She's just like, again, checking in like, hey, how are you? And I text her back, can you call me now? Like, help me now. I need to talk to them right now. And I don't think I've ever felt this supported in my entire life. And it is because of authentic community. And it's because I have allowed myself to be vulnerable to people who understand and now are stepping up for me.
Joe and I the other day we're talking through a training that we're offering to our community this coming week around like what safe communities look like and how to identify them and all that great stuff. And Joe just like very succinctly said, like you shouldn't have to change who you are to be in the group. And it was like, oh, like everything boils down to like that like one concept of like, do we want to perhaps change unhealthy coping mechanisms? Sure. Like, do we want to grow as people? Yes, but it's not saying that like who I am needs to be different. It is saying that like, okay, maybe the trauma responses have impacted us and we want to leave those behind. That's a very different thing than like I am lovable, acceptable, valuable for what I bring to the space, period. Like it doesn't need to be different. And I think that that has been a really powerful thing in my life to see that like consistently showing up. And you know, I have the benefit of, you know, I've been in the LTS community the longest. And but what that means is like I get to be surrounded by people regularly who offer that. And so like in the face of people sometimes assuming that like, oh, like everybody's just like sitting around like crying the whole time. And it's like, no, we're sitting around like changing everything that we want to change and accepting who we are at the same time. And that's what this space offers to people. And it only comes if everybody there is willing to provide that energy to everybody else. Um, and it changes everything. Like it really does. Um, all right. So we made it through 3 questions. Congratulations. I had planned on a potential fourth, but we will have many more discussions in the future. I really appreciate you all being willing to share your perspectives on these things, and I think it will help a lot of people see what it looks like to be part of this. And I'm really excited to keep unfolding this as we do more episodes in the future. So again, thank you all for your space and energy and presence and all of the beautiful, wonderful things that you bring to LTS.
Yeah, it's nice seeing all your faces.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know.
All right. So I'm going to
Magical.
do the official wrap up and then we'll say goodbye. All right. So thank you for listening to the Louder Than Silence podcast. If you'd like more information, please visit us at louderthansilence.org or follow us on Instagram at louderthansilence.org. This podcast and all of our programs at LTS come from your donations. Please consider donating today, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for the most current episodes. We'll see you next month.